the F1 Focus Podcast with Welman and Hendrik Verwoerd.
Welcome back to Formula One Focus. A little bit delayed this week. Events out of our control, delayed it a little bit. But Hendrik, welcome back. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, nice to be back.
Lots of action, and the most important news, I suppose, that South Africa is buzzing about is the fact that we might be handing, or are going to be handing in an application to host the Grand Prix in South Africa. What's changed in the meantime? Last time we heard it was going to be in Cape Town, this place and that place and the other, and suddenly Kyalami's back in the running. And this time it seems to be much more of a sure thing than before.
Well, I think it's a sure thing that Kyalami is aiming to get their Grade 1 status. That is quite obvious. That was the announcement that they made last week, and it was unfortunately after we did our recording. And basically, they said that they had now submitted plans for the upgrading of Kyalami to a Formula One or a FIA Grade 1 status. And the FIA has now approved those plans. In other words, if they go ahead and they do those upgrades, then Kyalami will be a Grade 1 Formula One status track. So that is the news development, that Kyalami has now got the approval to go ahead with the upgrades. That doesn't mean that we're going to get a Grand Prix, of course, because as we said on many occasions in the past, there are many things that still have to fall in place. And we know that there's a process going on from the government side at the moment. It seems like that process is coming to an end. I was informed, or I picked it up from other media sources, that our Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gaten McKenzie, is going to go to the Austrian Grand Prix this weekend, and he's going to submit South Africa's bid for a place on the calendar. And he says then he will make the announcement of who their preferred bidder or the preferred promoter is going to be next week on the 1st of July. In other words, next Tuesday. At the moment, the process is ongoing to appoint or to determine who is the government's preferred bidder. And we don't know whether that's going to be Kyalami or whether it's the street circuit in Cape Town or the yet-to-be-built circuit outside of Cape Town. Or anybody else who wants to host the Grand Prix in South Africa. It's important to understand, of course, that the circuit or the venue is not the promoter of the event. Kyalami, if they do the upgrades, and if they do, get to that status, that does not mean that Kyalami is going to be the promoter of the event. The promoter is an outside business that will then rent that circuit for a certain period of time in order to stage the Grand Prix. That's probably for something like a month up to the end, and they're going to have to pay Kyalami, their rate. So that's part of the costs for a promoter. Promoter that will have to find money, not only to rent the event. They'll also have to find money to put on the major music concerts that Formula One is determined to have at every event at the moment. So they've got to get, a Taylor Swift or somebody out to Kyalami and pay for that. And of course, they have to pay the hosting fee, which in South Africa's case is probably going to be in the region of 800 million rand per event for a minimum period of 5 years. So, those are the kind of stumbling blocks. We've mentioned this in the past that lie ahead. And that's only for Kyalami. If you're talking about Cape Town, if Cape Town is announced as the preferred bidder with their street circuit, then of course they will have to carry the costs of setting up the circuit and building it and breaking it down afterwards. All the costs related to hosting or having a race in the city streets. And I suspect that what is going to happen if they do get it, I suspect it's not going to happen, but if they do get it, it's going to mean that certain city streets around the Greenpoint and Seapoint area, Willie Point and that sort of area, are going to be closed for up to 6 months before the event, because putting up a Formula E event or a Formula E street event is not remotely on the level of a Formula One event. I've been to a number of those events, so I know what it takes. And so certainly Cape Townians, I don't think are going to be happy with having that sort of disruption for, 4, 5, 6 months per year for the next 5 years or whatever. So, you know, those are the things that are hanging in the air, and we await the announcement next week from Gayton McKenzie as to who is going to be the preferred bidder. And he has said, quote unquote, once he's made that announcement, then it's up to Formula One. Then, of course, they have to, you know, the promoter will have to find the finance. And I argue that most of that finance will have to come from the taxpayer's pocket. And he will have to find, negotiate a spot on the calendar. And as the calendar as it is at the 24 races is probably only going to open up a space for a new event, whether it's South Africa or anybody else, in 2027 or 2028, around about that time. So, you know, lots of things can still happen, and it's certainly not a given that South Africa is going to get that Grand Prix.
I was sort of under the impression that Kyalami is now going to be the preferred candidate because they agreed they're going to have to spend the money. But now, obviously, it seems like what you just told me, Cape Town is still in the running. The other thing that you said was...
I don't know, because, excuse me, but I don't know, because nobody knows who actually submitted bids to the bid committee. Okay. Yeah. What is known is that there is an organization in Cape Town that wants to host the Grand Prix, and there is another organization that's planning... reportedly planning to build a brand new circuit outside Cape Town around the Visanta Kraal area. And not much is known about that proposal. And then, of course, Kyalami, which is quite open. You know, they have always been the home of the South African Grand Prix, and they are certainly going to be one of the bidders. Not they, the promoter who's going to use Kyalami. And I don't know who's the promoter for the Kyalami event. So that's what we're going to find out next week. Did the government actually choose a promoter? Because that promoter will have had to show that they can actually put this event up. You know, they can find the money and that they can put up this event. So if there's none of the three bidders or promoters is able to meet those requirements, then we are not going to have a preferred bidder, and then that's the end of the story. And that's what we're going to have to find out next week.
Let's look at Kyalami now. You just mentioned that Kyalami said they want to be a world-class circuit, and to do that, they have to get the circuit up to Formula One standards. They're willing to spend the money now, but it's going to take about 3 years to do that. So if it's going to be Kyalami, there won't be a Formula One race anyway for at least 3 years, I suppose, until the track is actually ready. So it's still way down, way down the road. Yeah, it's not going to happen next year, guys. And the calendar for next year has already been out, like you said before, been published. It's not going to happen. And then another thing is, even if we have the track, even if we apply for everything, who's going to make way for us? Because they're not going to add another race to 24 races. I don't think so.
No, I mean, there are a number of events that are running to the end of their contracts. I mean, next year, for instance, we won't have Zandvoort. And I suspect after next year, we're only going to have one Spanish Grand Prix in Madrid, not Barcelona as well. Next year, we're going to have two in Spain, two events in Spain. So one of them is going to fall off. Then I think from 2028 onwards, Belgium is going to be on a rotation basis every second year. So, there's all kinds of possibilities. But as you say, 3 years for all these upgrades to be done, that means 26, 27, and 28 that are out as far as South Africa is concerned. And 29 is then on that basis the earliest possibility. Just to quickly go back to what I said earlier on, that we don't know that there's a bidder. There is a bidder, of course, if Mr. McKenzie is going to submit a proposal this coming weekend. So clearly, then that means that they did decide on a promoter, and who that is going to be announced next week.
Well, you just said he's going to. And in the application, what are you going to call it? It's going to be at the Austrian Grand Prix, which is what we're going to be talking about just now. I suppose, it's a nice little coincidence that you happen to just fly out to watch a Grand Prix and then hand over a piece of paper that you could have emailed. But anyway.
Well, he's our Minister of Sport, isn't he? So.
I suppose so. I'm being tongue-in-cheek here. It's a bit of a pipe dream, I suspect. That amount of money, that's eye-watering amounts of money. You talked about 800 million a year times 5 years. That's 4 billion rand. How are you ever going to recover that? No, that's
only the hosting fee. I mean, then you're organizing it, you're probably going to cost you another 200 million per year. So you're looking at, $1 billion plus per year for minimum 5 years. And not a business plan. We've already spoken about this, but the business plan doesn't mean that the promoter is going to actually make money out of this. Yeah. Their only source of income is the gate, the ticket sales. And people are talking, get it, a title sponsor, get sponsors to put the money in. That Formula One does not allow individual sponsors or individual events to have sponsors.
Yeah.
If you get a sponsor, that money actually goes to Formula One. It doesn't go to your pocket as a promoter. You can have a naming right and call it maybe the Midrand Grand Prix if you want to do that. If the Midrand municipality wants to put in some money, the event at Imola, which is known as the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix for the region in which it's known. It's where it's located. So you can do that, but you cannot put in, I don't know, name out of the pick and pay South African Grand Prix. You can't do that because that name sponsorship will go to Formula One. Like you had the Rolex event. They currently have a number of other sponsored names, but that money goes to Formula One.
No, Kyalami skeptical. We talked about the Austrian Grand Prix coming up. Let's talk about that briefly. Red Bull's home track, of course, lots of action this year for the first time in a couple of years. It's not going to be a sprint race there, normal race weekend. Thank goodness I'm not a fan. I tell you what, I saw with sprint races what happened with MotoGP, where they have a sprint race every single weekend, and it's become a procession. It's going the opposite way of what they wanted to achieve with sprint races. A bit more excitement, isn't that? Now that's not working. So what can we expect from this weekend? What are the headlines from this Grand Prix this weekend?
Well, I think we're going to look whether certain things that happened in Canada a couple of weeks ago will continue or will carry on or carry over. Obviously, what is the situation going to be between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri at McLaren after the clash that they had there? And there's been a bit of a fallout, after that.
Has there? I thought it was sort of set under the carpet.
He basically said, look, this cannot happen again. You have to have better discipline. You have to judge the distance between the cars better. I was talking to both drivers.
Not between Oscar and Lando, but from the team saying, listen, watch your step kind of thing.
Let's just keep in mind that we're racing for the team. They are not going to issue team orders. They were specific about that. We are not going to issue team orders, but we are still going to, expect the drivers to be disciplined. Basically, that's what they. So, how is that going to turn out this weekend? The Austrian Grand Prix has been the scene of many a clash between teammates in the past. Even in the Mercedes days, I don't know. I checked the other day. Even in the Mercedes days, I think it was in 2016 when Nico and Lewis had a clash in that exact spot. Turn 3, the right hand at the top of the at that exact spot. Yeah. So and last year, of course, it was the beginning of the series of clashes between Lando and Max. That was really where it's actually started. And so, we can expect, I think, some more of that. We must also keep in mind that this is the final race where Max Verstappen is still under threat of a race ban. He's still on 11 points. If he gets one more point on his license this weekend in Austria, then he'll have to sit out one race, the following race at Silverstone. So that is a threat hanging over him, and I will not be surprised if he gets goaded again, like George did with him in Canada about 10 days ago when he started, some word as to the number of penalties and what he can and cannot do and that sort of thing. So I expect some more of that sort of psychological, one-upmanship or gamesmanship between maybe the two of them. Maybe some of the team principals get involved again. Let's see if Toto Wolff and Christian Horner maybe get involved in that sort of tit for tat again. So that's stuff to look forward to. Obviously, the teams are bringing some upgrades. And we are now starting to get to the point in the season. This is round 11, the point in the season out of 24 where teams are starting not to spend too much time with upgrades because they need to start seriously looking at their cars for next year, for 2026. So a big upgrade for Ferrari apparently this weekend. And the question is that upgrade going to solve the problem of their ride height? We've spoken about that in the past. Will they be able to solve that problem and run their car as low to the ground as they would like to do, as they were able to do up to the disqualifications in China. Also for Red Bull, bringing a major update apparently to the RB21. So we will see how that works out. And we'll have to see how Aston Martin continue, if they do continue with the a little bit of an uptake that they've had so far the last 2 events. So those are the things that I think. Also, of course, George Russell won last time out in Canada. He won last year in Austria, thanks to the battle between Verstappen and Lando. He was the one. You had the 2 dogs fighting over a bone, and he was the third one that ran away with a bone. And that was only his second career victory, Georgia. And coming off the victory in Canada, can he continue with that form? Who knows? It's going to be a very hot weekend, apparently. The prediction is for late 20s and early 30 outside temperatures, ambient temperatures. So that means high circuit temperatures. The tires are going to be the C3, C4, and C5. So not quite the softest, but on the soft side of the range. And that could hurt somebody like Mercedes, for instance, who are not good in high temperatures, especially high track temperatures. But who knows? They did have high track temperatures in Canada, and they did have a rear suspension upgrade in Canada. Maybe that carries through for them in Austria. So that's also another question mark. So lots of things that I think we can look forward to for this weekend, both on the technical side and the sporting side.
Talking about George Russell and Aston Martin, you mentioned them in the same breath, and there's a reason for that. Lots of rumors about him being wooed actively by Aston Martin to come across there and, spearhead the new campaign. Everything is now sort of falling into place. Adrian Newey is there. The wind tunnel is finished. The simulator apparently is a bit wonky. There seems to be a bit of a problem there that Adrian Newey talked about. Any truth to that rumor? I mean, everybody expected George to be an automatic signing, almost kind of a thing. They're putting it off and they'll sign over the summer maybe or whatever. But I mean, for a driver that's a clear number one, is having the best season of his life, George Russell now, not to have certainty about where he's going next year, that to me seems to indicate something's afoot.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the body language and even the language he uses, I don't think he's concerned about about not having a seat next year. I think the speculation is much more in the media. I think guys are looking for news stories, and that's absolutely normal. That is absolutely what happens this time of the year when a major player like George Russell doesn't yet have a renewal on his contract. But again, I think we have to wait until the summer break. There's still quite a way to go. We've got the British Grand Prix the week after Austria. Then we've got a 3-week break, and then we go to Belgium and Hungary, and only after Hungary, that's the summer break. So there's still some time to go. I don't think it hurts George at all for these rumors to go around, and he's now coming off a race win in Canada, so he's in a very strong position. I think he can negotiate himself a nice little increase on his Mercedes contract. I'm not sure that he's willing to, at this point in his career, take the chance of going to another team, a brand new team, and again next to Fernando Alonso. Let's also not forget that Lance Stroll has a contract, in his pocket. There's not a question of that. There's an open seat at Aston Martin. So I think the signs are very much that George is going to remain at Mercedes next year. Probably on a longer term contract, a 2 or a 3-year contract, obviously with the normal, options.
Caveats.
But I will be very, very surprised if they. I think Max Verstappen is the only one that could possibly replace him at Mercedes. If Max is available next year, and I think this weekend is the weekend, as far as I understand, where he still has to be in 4th position in the championship or better for him to not look at leaving the team. I think that's the performance clause in his contract, as far as I understand. So that could well change this weekend. But I cannot see that. What I'm saying is that if Max is a free agent, then he's probably on the radar of just about every team boss in the field. And it would not be beyond the realms of possibility for Mercedes to sign him, because Toto has been making a lot of noises about him, and he's not really stopped doing that. You know, even after Canada, he did not blame Max for the protests that Red Bull put in. He said that he clearly, Toto expressly said he's sure that Max had nothing to do with it. And that is I think, you know, something that could be telling, but that's also part of the speculation. It's juicy speculation, but that's all it is at the moment.
Well, I think the biggest news of the week so far is the fact that Kimi Antonelli is now finished with school. That's it. Can you believe it? I mean, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, let's leave that there. Lots of other news about potential testing next year, because we know the new regulations are coming in. They've brought out a completely revised schedule, but unusual, very early in the year. Talk to me about that.
Yes, and I think that's you know, the way that they want to make sure that the teams get maximum possible time to test the new cars and the new power units and everything that is new next year. You know, the fuel is new next year, the power units are new. So, and obviously the bodyworks and the bodywork and aerodynamics and everything is new. So, you know, they would like to test as much as they possibly can. And what they've done now is they've decided on the first test of the year will be in January, end of January, in Barcelona, and it will run over 5 days instead of 3. But the caveat there is that the teams, each team may only use 3 of the 5 days. And the thinking behind it, I think it makes quite a lot of sense. In the past, that time of the year, it's very cold in Spain. It's, you know, in the past, it even snowed that time of the year. So it's possible that they need another, you know, an extra day or 2 just for the weather conditions. So they've made provision of that. Provision for that. And the other thing is also, you know, if teams do encounter some relatively serious problems that they can sort out at the track, and you know, Barcelona is not that far away from all of their factories, so they can easily, you know, get stuff shipped overnight. But you know, that they could use another day. Maybe use, you know, day 1 and then use on the track, and then day 2 to fix whatever units or whatever problems they have, and then use day 3 and then maybe use day 4 or so, or maybe day 1 and 3 and 5 or whatever. So that would be an option for the teams, and I think it makes a lot of sense, because you know, this is the biggest technical change in the history of Formula One, because it's both the body and you know, both the chassis and the engine and power and the fuel and tires and everything. You know, narrower tires and that sort of thing. So it makes a lot of sense. So that will be the first test of the year at the end of January in Barcelona, and then they go to Bahrain for the 3 days scheduled tests in February. So you know, that's what the preparation is going to look like for the new season.
Something else that came up, and I love to speculate. You're a bit more careful. Valtteri Bottas, in typical Valtteri Bottas style, put out a nice little teaser. We was, you know, padding or touching a little Cadillac seat there in a Cadillac SUV. We love the seat. You know, I said to you before, listen, you would say something like that if there wasn't something to it. You know, that'd be a bit provocative. You know, to Cadillac, for example. I'm wondering if that's not a bit of a silent nod to say, listen, you've got to see kind of a thing, but I can't say too much. Or maybe it's just a sort of a cheeky reminder, say, listen, you know, pick me.
Yeah, it could be just a game in the media that he plays, that he wants to keep his profile high enough. But I mean, you know, when you negotiate a seat at a team, you don't negotiate in the media. You know, you go and see and you talk to the guys and you send WhatsApp messages or emails or telephone calls or whatever. You know, you don't, whatever comes out in the media is probably planted or is obviously, you know, just a coincidence. So, yeah, I think they may quite have been a message there. I think more tongue-in-cheek than anything else. I wouldn't be surprised if they do pick him. I mean, he's an experienced driver. He's a proven race winner. He's a championship contender at some point in his career. So yeah, he would be a good fit for them. And it's quite open from Valtteri's side that he wants to go back as get a racing seat. He doesn't want to be a reserve driver for much longer. So yeah, but Cadillac is in a situation where they can basically pick and choose who they want. And as I said in the past, I think what they're probably going to do is find an experienced driver, and Valtteri certainly is one. There's also, of course, a number of other experienced drivers that are available. Checo Perez is available. I think that's somebody that they will seriously have a look at because of his Mexican connections. And then maybe a youngster to learn from the senior driver and to help build the team. And I don't know when we're going to have the announcement from them. It's something that they have to do at some point, but they probably have other priorities at this point than to announce their drivers, because the drivers don't really have too much of a say in terms of the car. They have preferences, but in terms of the actual design of the car, they the layout and the architecture of the car, they don't have much of a say to that. They will have a say in terms of setup, but nothing else basically.
I'm glad you mentioned Sergio Perez, and you also mentioned the setup of a car. The driver doesn't have too much input. Now, for the first time in a long time, Sergio Perez has sort of broken his silence, and what he was saying is that he got a very good authority from inside Red Bull that they regret letting him go, because obviously his replacements are not particularly shooting the lights out. And obviously part of that problem was the fact that that entire Red Bull car is designed around Max Verstappen's preferences and driving style, and everybody else was battling along with it. So that's quite an interesting one, the fact that Sergio is now saying that he's got a good authority that Red Bull regrets letting him go. I mean, it's quite clear that they do. I mean, Helmut Marko even blamed Sergio last year for the staff not getting their bonuses. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Yeah, I think Sergio will probably be a shoe-in for Cadillac, not just because he's a good driver, but also because of his commercial backing. That guy just has so many good sponsors. He's a shoe-in.
Yeah, and I think he pointed out what most of us actually pointed out last year, and he couldn't say it. But when we, all of us basically said that Red Bull has made the second car an undrivable car because they've developed that car on behalf and for the benefit of Max Verstappen. You can't blame them for doing that, but it is a strategy that is currently did last year and is currently still biting them in the back. Because you cannot have just one car that scores points, and you have a driver that fits that car beautifully and drives that car absolutely amazingly, and that specific car cannot be driven by anybody else as effectively. That as a strategy just doesn't make sense. It makes much more sense to have the approach that their sister team or the junior team has, where Racing Bulls basically say, we don't want to get maximum downforce, maximum performance, but the car is undrivable. We want to make the car drivable so that the drivers can get the maximum out of it. Both drivers can get the maximum out of that car. And that is the kind of strategy or design and development strategy that makes sense from the outside, because then you have two drivers that can score points if you have a competitive car. But the performance window of the RB21 is just so narrow, and Max, obviously, with his talent, with the amazing way that he can overcome that, nobody can deny that. But that is exactly why he can still perform, because he can get that car to do things that nobody else can get it to do. So. They certainly are regretting. That is quite clear. There is some talk about them making another driver change this season because Tsunoda is certainly not performing. They are looking. Well, I'm not saying they are looking. There is speculation that they might be looking at another speculation that they might be looking at another driver change. Interestingly, at the British Grand Prix, they are going to put in the young Arvin Ledblad in free practice 1 for them, and of course, that is something that has probably been scheduled a long time ago. That's not as a reaction to what is going on with Tsunoda. But it opens up a possibility that one of the current Racing Bull drivers, and there's probably going to be Isaac Hadjar, it opens up the possibility that he could move over to Red Bull, and that Lindblad can maybe then take his place at Racing Bulls. So I think a lot of eyes are going to be at Lindblad's free practice 1 performance at Silverstone in a week or so from now, after Austria. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on that.
And Yuki moves down to Racing Bulls and Liam Lawson gets ejected, or what do you think? Just as a speculative way.
Well, that's the question, eh? That's the question. You've got, what is it? You've got 5 drivers for 4 seats.
Well, 2 broken drivers and 3 other drivers.
They could. What they could do, obviously, is just swap Tsunoda and Hadjar around. and keep Lindblad as a reserve. That way, you keep all five of them, in the same fold. I would be very much surprised if they actually give Lindblad an F1 seat this year. But he's highly regarded. He's one of those potential superstars. Young Swedish, British, or was it Norwegian? I can't remember.
Swedish, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that is certainly something to keep an eye on.
Other news: last year, Liberty bought or offered to buy Dorna, which is the controlling body or owner of MotoGP. There was lots of legislative hurdles, regulatory hurdles to jump over, and they've now got unconditional approval to go ahead and do the purchase.
Yeah, from the European Union Competition Commission. Yeah, so they can go ahead. Apparently, it's $4.8 billion for 80% or something like that. It's 80% of Dorna. So Espeleta, what is his name? Espeleta is going to continue as the head honcho there and still continue, and he and his family will retain 20%. So
what's interesting to me is that you said they can actually, if they wanted to, host both the MotoGP and the Formula 1 Grand Prix at the same weekend at the same track. They've got so much freedom. It's not practical or logistically, it doesn't make sense or anything, but still, they can do whatever they want to. And we all thought there might be some sort of a, give a little bit here and compromise there, but no, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was an unconditional go-ahead from the EU Commission. So there are no conditions to it. They can pair the two formulas together at the same event. It's not going to happen. It cannot happen. It's not practical. But in theory, there's nothing stopping them from doing it. They can, pair the two in terms of their negotiations with television broadcasts, which is probably going to happen. Put them as a package. That's the sort of thing. They can do whatever they want. And I think what they need to do, I don't know, MotoGP remotely as well as I know Formula 1, which I don't know well anyway. So, it seems that Liberty Media can do a lot for MotoGP, having learned a lot of lessons from their involvement with Formula 1. Especially on the marketing side. That's the big thing on the marketing side. How to give MotoGP a much higher profile. The other thing is, I think, also on the side of making the teams viable. It seems to me, and I think is it KTM that's on the verge at the moment. It seems to me that one of the problems, and I'm not an expert at all, but one of the problems is that the teams may not be financially viable as operations. In the same way as Formula 1 teams are, and Formula 1 teams are now, each and every one, even the lowest one is valued at more than $1 billion, and they don't, you don't find a situation anymore where any team is for sale for $1 plus debts. So that's one of the big things that Liberty has been able to do for Formula 1 and to turn the whole situation around. The teams are now viable business units. So I think if they can do the same for MotoGP, they probably that will be a big deal for MotoGP. So and maybe also look forward to a drive to survive on two wheels.
Right to survive, yeah, okay.
Right to survive. They've now done it with the Formula 1 Academy for the ladies. So I don't know whether you've seen that series. It's quite interesting on Netflix. But they can do much the same for MotoGP. I would suggest that there's probably much more personality, intrigue, that sort of thing going on behind the scenes in MotoGP than it's currently being shown. So I think there's a lot of promise there.
So to take a step back, I just remembered something when you talked about Formula 1 teams being worth so much money, even if they the last team on the grid or on the the points table, but the team that's sort of at the bottom is Alpine. We talked about Luca De Mayo last week resigning. But this week is the fifth race that Franco Colapinto was supposedly given to prove his worth. And now suddenly it looks like Briatore is backtracking a little bit on that. Do you expect him to keep his seat, or do you expect some more drama in that team? Maybe this weekend, but pretty soon?
Yeah, I think they're probably going to keep him. Colapinto's got a lot of talent. He has shown that, but he also tends to be inconsistent. So what are they going to do? Get rid of him, and then who are they going to put in his place? So, I think they've got bigger fish to fry as a team and as an operation. That is to get more consistently competitive, and to get the team in a position where they could be, a good asset for whoever comes in after De Meyer, to consider the team as an asset to be sold. So they need to get, those things in place. And, Flavio Briatore is very much, a man who shoots from the hips, like the president of the United States, says things that just comes to his mind. The press release initially after the Colapinto announcement, and the press release goes right to the top before it gets sent out to the media. It gets the approval right to the top, which would in this case have meant Flavio himself. That press release said that Flavio said, quoted him as saying that he's got 5 races. And then when was it? A couple of races ago, when he was asked about that, he said, "No, I never said that. I never said that. There's no such thing. He's got the whole season ahead of him." So that is Flavio. That's the way. That is unfortunately the way he is. So I think just looking through the noise, I think Colapinto is going to stay where he is until the end of the season. It doesn't make sense for them to make another change.
Right, Hendrik, thank you, man. I'm looking forward to this race. I like Austria. Remember all those sausage curbs every year, the track limits, lots of action, very few corners, very fast track, turn 3, all the drama happening there. And I'm wondering, like you said earlier, I'm just saying, tongue in cheek again, that maybe someone might goad Max into having the red mist descending again. You never know.
Well, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it is. It's part of racing, man. It's not just who's the fastest on track. You play mind games. I mean, Max has been sort of immune to that up till now, but you can provoke him. I've seen it before. I'm not saying anything funny. I'm just saying, get him to get another. People can do funny things. Anyway, Hendrik, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, talk to you next week.
The F1 Focus Podcast with MV Welman and Hendrik Verwoerd.